What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of Pistons Daily, where you can find daily content covering all things Detroit Pistons, Monday through Friday. As always, I'm your host. My name is Kyle Garrison. I'm over on Twitter at Kyle Garrison2, where I talk all things Detroit sports. So head over there, give me comments, questions, concerns, episode ideas. I'd love to hear from all you guys. Also, shout out to everyone who tunes in every single day. We are on the road to 2,000 subscribers. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way to help support the channel. With that being said, let's jump into a Wednesday edition of Pistons Daily. So first things first, let's do our skill of the day. And that is just going to be Asar Thompson's, impact in transition. And a lot of these specific skills I've talked about can be backed up by advanced metrics and advanced stats. And that's going to be the case once again today. So we know that Asar Thompson is one of the most athletic players in the entire NBA. He's an elite defender on and off the ball. And really just the fluidity with which he operates is pretty incredible to watch, especially considering the lack of live game reps he has in his first two seasons and the fact that he was coming into year two, coming off of blood clots, didn't have a full offseason to really get acclimated to the speed of the NBA game and had to really work on his offensive game throughout live game reps last year and in the regular season. But this year, heading into year three, he had a full year, a full offseason to really work on what he wanted to work on, get stronger, become more agile, and just become a better NBA player overall. But when you're looking at where he thrived last year on the offensive side of the ball, it was in transition, and those are backed up by advanced metrics like I mentioned. When Asar Thompson was on the floor, the Pistons scored 2.5 more transition points per 100 possessions, which was in the 97th percentile amongst wings. When Asar was on the floor, the Pistons had a 1.8% increase in the percent of possessions started with a transition play, which was in the 90th percentile amongst wings. And also when Asar Thompson was on the floor, the Pistons had a 14.8 increase in the amount of points scored per 100 transition plays, which was in the 94th percentile amongst wings. So clearly, with Asar Thompson's to grab a rebound and lead the break, push off of a steal, a block, or a deflection, it all makes sense. All of these numbers check out because what we saw from him last year, he thrives with the ball in his hands, off of a rebound or off of a steal, getting down the court, utilizing his speed and his quickness and his high flying ability to finish at the rim in transition. And again, he did not have a full offseason to get prepared for last year, and he did this past season. So while this part of the transition offensive part of his game is going to be even more refined than it was last year, I think that the half court part of his offensive game is going to see a lot of improvements in just his overall ability to be a point forward and thrive with the ball in his hands. Because we've seen when he's in transition with the ball in his hands, he can pass, he can facilitate, he can get to the cup, he can set the offense up. There's so many different things that he can do. We just have to see it come to life, and we have to see a full year where he can get a full sample size and work alongside the rest of this young core. And I do think that the offensive parts of his game that we want to see improve will slowly but surely. It's not going to come overnight, but as the year goes on, we're going to see that progression, and we're going to see the transition offensive part of his game transition into his half-court offense, and we're going to see a lot of improvement there. But let me know in the comments or over on Twitter if you think that Asar should focus on becoming an elite two-way transition player, or if there are other areas of the game you would like to see him work on going forward and heading into year three. But the next topic I wanted to touch on is Dan Favale over at Bleacher Report dropped an article predicting which offseason moves will look the worst this season. And while the Pistons are not on this list, a move that could have been made by Trajan Langdon in the front office is on here, and that is the Dennis Shruder signing to the Sacramento Kings. And while I really like Dennis Shruder, I think he did great things for the Pistons, specifically in the playoffs last year. You know, the three-point efficiency, the efficiency overall during the regular season, and just the fact that he is very ball-dominant, reliant. I just think that the Pistons did a good job of moving on from him, allowing him to go into a great situation in Sacramento where he can be that number one point guard. And I just don't think that he was going to fit with this team this year. So I like moving on from him. The Pistons did get a trade exception out of it. Don't know if they'll end up using it, But again, shout out to Dennis Shruder. He did great things for this team, but I am glad they moved on from him. And it looks like people around the NBA community are kind of questioning the move by the Kings. And I'll just read what Dan Favale wrote in regards to Dennis Shruder. He says, Domantas Sabonis called for the Sacramento Kings to add a point guard this summer. They answered by signing Dennis Shruder, who is more floor general adjacent, to a 3-year deal worth $44.4 million. The contract looks like an overpay at first glance. It still might be. Shruder is 31, and so much of his effectiveness is predicated on quickness. He will not retain his value as well as others over time. Still, only the first 2 years of his agreement are fully guaranteed. Just $4.4 million of his salary in the final season is a lock to remain on the ledger. This is nevertheless damning with faint praise. Shruder is not an intuitive fit on a roster still teeming with a bunch of other guards and on-ball creators. More than that, fitting his deal into the Kings' payroll structure required trading Jonas Valanciunas, one of the best backup centers in the league, for Dario Saric, who's years removed from being an every-night rotation player. To make matters even worse, Valanciunas might have been willing to forego most of his salary to play for Greek EuroLeague club Panathinaikos. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, I'm butchering that. Let me know in the comments below. I apologize if I am. But continuing on, he writes, exploring that route would have made more sense than housing Saric and creating a miniature trade exception. Dumping Valanciunas is perhaps the worst of the Kings' moves in a vacuum, but it only happened because they decided to pay Shruder. So again, although I have nothing against Dennis Shruder, and I thought he was great last season, I agree with Dan Favale over here that the Kings are in a weird spot. I don't think that it was a great move for them to sign Dennis Shruder. They had to get rid of Jonas Valanciunas, who's an unbelievable player and is going to do great things for the Nuggets. But again, I don't think that Dennis would have fit on this team, and I think he's much better off on a team where he can be that starting point guard, even though they do have a ton of ball handlers with Malik Monk and Keon Ellis and Zach LaVine and Devin Carter and some of these other players. Dennis Shruder can still fit in that rotation. I don't think that he's worth $44 million over 3 years, but I do think that he can still be serviceable for them, and I wish the best for him. But when you're looking at the Pistons in regards to this signing, it was a great idea to move on. I think Caris Levert is kind of that replacement for Dennis Shruder, and he's much more of a combo guard. He doesn't need to have the ball in his hands to thrive like I think Dennis Shruder needed to. He was a more efficient scorer last year at 47%, while Dennis shot 41%. He didn't dish out as many assists per night as Dennis Shruder, but he had a better assist to turnover ratio. And I just think that Caris Levert gives you much better on and off ball defense. He's longer, he's taller, he's more athletic. And then again, he can get to the rim quicker. He can thrive with the ball in his hands, but he can also play off ball. He's a much better catch and shoot 3-point shooter as well. And I do think that, Dennis Shruder offered you a little bit of flexibility at that backup point guard position, but now that Jaden Ivey is back, they want to see what he can do as a secondary ball handler, and Caris Levert just makes much more sense overall as a combo guard that can play on or off ball, and he can play that 1, that 2, or really that 3 position if need be, and Dennis Shruder could really only play point guard. So again, now you have more flexibility coming off of the bench at that guard position, and Caris Levert really does just fill a lot of the needs that the Pistons needed. And I'm excited that they did go out and sign him, and that was kind of their pivot from Dennis Shruder, because as the offseason has gone on, we've seen that I think this Caris Levert signing is going to be very, very impactful for this team, and I do think that he's going to be better than what Dennis Shruder could have been this year. But let me know in the comments down below or over on Twitter if you think the Pistons made a mistake letting Dennis Shruder walk, or if you think that Caris Levert is an upgrade at that backup guard spot, and if you think it was smart for the front office to move on from Shruder as we kind of look at that signing in a nutshell and realize that maybe the Kings made a mistake. But moving on to another article that I thought was really, really interesting, and that was an Athletic article from David Aldridge, where they basically ranked each team's offseason moves without taking into consideration overall team talent whatsoever. And the Pistons ended in at number 21 on the worst offseason rankings list. Aldridge is just dropping his rankings over 3 days. So today was 30 through 21, and the Detroit Pistons fell into those teams in rank at 21. So I'll just read who was ahead of the Pistons, and then I'll read the reasoning behind it. So we're coming in at the worst possible offseason. Well, I guess not. The Golden State Warriors are not included in this list because they didn't make any offseason moves. They're still waiting on Jonathan Kuminga. They're, an absolute mess right now. But when you're looking at teams that actually did make offseason acquisitions, which was 29 out of 30, we start with the Boston Celtics at 29. They lost a lot of talent. 28, the Indiana Pacers also lost a ton of talent. The Toronto Raptors really didn't make a ton of moves. The New Orleans Pelicans, got rid of their first-round draft pick unprotected next year. The Phoenix Suns traded away Kevin Durant. They added Dylan Brooks and Jalen Green, who are pretty expensive. They added a guy like Mark Williams, who knows what he's going to look like. They drafted Kaman Malawak, so their center rotation looks a little weird. And then you have the Lakers coming in at 24. It's coming in at 23, the Miami Heat, 22, the Brooklyn Nets, and then 21, the Detroit Pistons. Obviously, we know what they added, what they lost, what they retained. But when looking at the skinny, what David Aldridge writes is, Detroit did okay considering the circumstances, but the likelihood of losing Malik Beasley off a sensational season to a gambling investigation was a big blow. He was a big part of the Pistons' resurgence last season. So too was losing Shruder, who was excellent in Detroit. Levert and Robinson plug right into those spots, though with Ivy returning as well. So Cade Cunningham will still have targets to whom he can spray the ball. Lanier's shooting prowess can get him into the rotation quickly too. Stewart and his physicality returns after missing most of Detroit's first-round series against the Knicks. Not most of it. He missed the entire series. But I just don't really agree with this ranking. I know David Aldridge does a great job, so I'm not coming at him whatsoever. I think he's a great journalist. If you're a 2K fan or if you follow the NBA at all, you know David Aldridge, and I think we just need to take this list with a grain of salt. He does specifically say that not to take this into too much consideration, that he's not actually ranking these teams after the offseason, but rather just ranking their offseason moves overall and in a vacuum. So again, this doesn't mean too much. You have teams like the Lakers, who I think are still one of the better teams in the NBA, the Pacers as well, who are in this list and who are high up on this list, coming in as teams that didn't have great off seasons. But I still think those are going to be two good teams. And I also think the Pistons are going to be a good team as well. But again, I've talked about it in detail. Acquisitions don't tell the full story of an offseason, and I'll continue to reiterate that because the improvement from this Pistons young core is what truly matters, and we're going to be looking at the growth of this young core from year to year as the biggest indicator of if they got better or if they got worse or if they regressed or progressed or whatnot, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter about the acquisitions that are made. It's more predicated on who grows, who gets better, how they mesh together as a core, and who you can rely on going forward as a staple of your lineup. And with 6 lottery picks from the last 5 drafts on your team currently, you have a lot of room for these guys to grow. And bringing in somebody and bringing in these big acquisitions is not a great way to round out your team. We've seen teams try and do that in the past, and it just doesn't usually work. You have to build from within, and you have to be a balanced team overall. And I think that's what the Pistons are building right now. So I would say that the Pistons at 21 is much too low. I think that they're more in the middle of the pack, around 15, because again, I don't think they had an insane offseason, but I do trust what Trajan Langdon is doing. I trust that he's looking for answers regarding this young core in their recent lottery picks, and he's going to make decisions based off of that instead of just going out on a limb and trading for a $46 million a year guy like Lauri Markkanen, but instead is allowing Ron Holland to get another year under his belt, is allowing Asar Thompson to become more acclimated to the speed of the NBA game and get a full offseason under his belt. He's allowing Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren to prove themselves in a year where they are eligible for an extension. So overall, it's just patience. If patience means that it's a bad offseason, then so be it. But again, I don't think the Pistons had a top 10 worst offseason in the NBA this past year just because they didn't go out and add somebody big like the Hawks or the Magic. I do think that this team has one of the best young cores in the league, and if you continue to stay patient, it's going to pay dividends in the long term. But give me your thoughts in the comments section below if you think the Pistons had a bottom 10 offseason in the NBA. Also, if you think they should have been ranked higher, or just overall what you think the front office could have done to improve this team more than they did. Again, I do think this team in this front office is rounding out very well. Yes, we would have liked to see Malik Beasley come back, but that's out of the front office's control. So again, there's a lot of unforeseen circumstances that went into this offseason, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, let me know, comment section down below, if you think the Pistons could have done more this offseason, or if you agree with me and think that, they are just doing what they need to do to allow this young core to thrive together. But before we wrap things up, I just wanted to talk about a trade idea that I've seen. I like to look through Twitter, the internet, and just all my sources every day to find any new Pistons news, especially right now during the summer when it's really, really slow and we're kind of in between summer league and training camp. There's not a ton going on, and we're really just looking at what other people are saying about the Pistons team, what the NBA media is saying, and one trade that keeps coming up, and I've talked about it here, is Lauri Markkanen. And I just wanted to give you guys a trade that has been kind of circulating all over Twitter and my news sources. And I just want to let you guys know before I give it to you, my answer to this is a hard no. I do not think this is a good trade whatsoever, and I'll explain after I read it off. So the proposed trade is Detroit gets Lauri Markkanen for Ron Holland, Tobias Harris, Marcus Sasser, a 2026 first-round pick, and a 2028 first-round pick. So first of all, getting rid of Tobias Harris and Marcus Sasser would not be the end of the world. Tobias Harris is 33 years old. He's been great for the Pistons last year. He's been great in years past when he was on the team. But if you have to move on from him to match salaries, then so be it. And I don't think it's the end of the world. Again, Marcus Sasser as well. We've kind of seen where they see his future on this team, and that is not in the rotation. It's somebody that's more of a plug-and-play guy. So he's pretty expendable at this point in his career. And again, I do think the Pistons are going to be competitive for the next 5 years. So those first-round picks are much more expendable than they have been in years past. But the reason that I'm 100% against this trade is that Ron Holland should, and in my opinion, will not be traded anytime soon. It's Trajan Langdon's first-round draft pick, and it's his only first-round draft pick as they did not have one this year. So in 2 years as the GM, or as the president of basketball operations, Trajan Langdon has had one first-round pick. That is Ron Holland. And the improved jump shot that we've seen from him at age 20 and in going into year 2, I don't think there's any reason to give up on this guy right now. I think that they would be doing themselves a disservice by trading a 20-year-old Ron Holland plus draft picks and plus, solid veteran player like Tobias Harris, another young piece in Marcus Sasser. I think they'd be doing themselves a disservice if they were to give up on those guys for Lauri Markkanen, who's creeping up on 30 right now, and the best basketball of his career. He might have 1 or 2 good years left, but I don't think he's ever going to be back to all-star level where he was a couple years ago. And I don't like the fact that there's a lot of people who think that Ron Holland is some expendable player where you can just trade him and not really think twice about it. I do think that Ron Holland is going to be exceptional in a couple of years. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. And again, he's still 20 years old, so there's so much room for growth. And I just think that it would be a mistake to let him go and to give up on him right now in this stage of his career. I think they'd regret it. I think they look at what he does in the years or in the future and see that he did come into his own as an NBA player. And I think he can be a guy that becomes a 3-level scorer and is an elite defender and has elite athleticism, becomes good with the ball in his hands. There's a lot of areas where he can really impact this team positively. So I would like to see the Pistons hold on to him. But let me know in the comments down below if you would be okay with trading a package surrounding around Ron Holland for a Lauri Markkanen caliber player, or if you're in the same boat as myself and would like the Pistons to keep riding with the 20-year-old and see what he can give you long term. But that's really all I've got for you guys today for a Wednesday edition of Pistons Daily. As always, like, subscribe, comment, turn on post notifications, and follow me on Twitter at Kyle Garrison2. Also, head over to Spotify, leave a 5-star review and a follow if you can. Once again, thank you guys all so much for tuning in every single day. With that being said, that is going to do it here for episode 48 of Pistons Daily, and I will catch you all